we're Tom and Alane Waters with Restoration International, and today we're going to be talking about how we grow our love.
That's right.
What are we really willing to do as couples to grow our love?
If we don't grow our love, we will not just become stagnant. The love will start to die. And especially as our kids get older and they start leaving home, that leaves just the two of us left. And oftentimes, this is when many parents don't know how to communicate, many couples don't know how to get along, and they find nothing of interest in each other.
That's right.
So it causes for separation and divorce.
Yeah, I remember actually after our children left, we were busy. We're always busy. I think everybody we're talking to knows what busyness is. And it's 8 o'clock one night, and I'm sitting at my desk, and my dear wife walks in the door.
And I said to him, so are we still a family? I mean, we've always had family time in the evening, family talk time, and we're just working all the time. And we're still a family. So every couple out there, if you don't have your kids at home, you are still a family, and you can grow your love and find out it can even be more dynamic than it has ever been.
Yeah, in one of our marriage retreats, we were just sharing how we grow our love, and I said to my wife, I'm having another love growth spurt.
And he didn't even have to tell me that, because I knew that. You sense the vibes from the other person, the way he looks, the aura about him, even the words he chose to speak. I knew he was having another love growth spurt, and that's wonderful. So if you don't have children at home, or if your kids are still at home, take the time to grow your love. And that's what we're going to be talking about, for our love. What are we going to do about growing our love?
1 Thessalonians, the 3rd chapter and the 12th verse says, the Lord make your love increase and overflow. We want our love to overflow for each other.
That's right. So we want to have that love growing in us, and to find that each day can be better than the day before. This is not an illusion. This isn't these idealistic things. This can be our reality by our cooperation. So today we're going to be looking at 4 areas of intimacy. Now, typically when we think of intimacy, we think of sexuality. That's only a piece of intimacy, and we will be discussing that. But we want to look at intimacy in the broader context, because that's how we really grow our love.
That's right. So communication intimacy is the first area that we want to talk about. Being able to communicate in a deeper way than just the superficial ships passing in the night kind of communication, where we're engaging to understand how things are going for my wife, what's really happening in her life, taking time to listen with understanding and really tuning in.
Yeah, really hearing my heart. I like it when he really is interested to hear what I think and hear my heart.
That's right.
So this is so important in our communication. It is a level of intimacy in the communication that we need to grow. And wives, we need to be doing this as well. We need to not think because he doesn't really have much to say that there isn't much going on in his head. We need to learn how to draw that out by asking questions, not being overbearing, but showing an interest. And the more we connect with each other in all the lines of intimacy, the easier that deepening communication intimacy will become.
Yeah, I hate to admit this, but I can remember many times when my wife used to call me on the phone, and I'd say, so what's happening? What's up? What do you need?
Or yeah.
I mean, okay, so that's a true confession. But I began to recognize that intimacy and communication needs to affect all of our communication. So for actually quite a few years now,
That's right.
when I see my wife's call coming in on my cell phone, I'm saying things like, how's the love of my life?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, can you imagine you're calling your husband and that's the greeting you get? How's the love of my life? Or how are you doing? Or great to hear from you. So we want to spice up that communication. Look at ways that we communicate daily, but put in words that change the dynamic of the communication. Look at words that will make our communication more interesting and more personal, such as using these words like sweetheart, darling, sweets, love, lover, whatever it is, address each other with those endearing terms, and you can create your own, which we have, and they're just between us, but create those and share those rather than just saying, would you like a drink of water? Honey, can I get you a drink of water? Sweetie, would you like a drink of water? There's a different aura about how we're communicating that draws the heart and grows the love.
Yeah, and these are really simple things, and yet the simple things, it's the little things in life that often accumulate to make the sum of life's happiness. It's not just the big thing.
That's right.
It's the little things that we do daily that can really make the intimacy of our communication special.
That's right. You know, the book Song of Solomon, it's the love book of the Bible. And there's so much beautiful, intimate language in there. And it talks about those languages in Song of Solomon chapter 4, verse 1 as a reference. How beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. If my husband speaks to me like that, he's got my attention. Even if we're going to be talking about, you know, some other thing that we have to do, like getting ready for a trip or whatever it is, just greeting me and saying, you know, honey, you look great today, or, you know, you're beautiful, I love you. And then we can get into regular conversations, starting out conversations with those types of greetings and sprinkling those love messages in, make a huge difference.
Yeah, so remember, we're talking about growing our love. What are we willing to do? This is a simple and small investment, but it's hard for our selfish, me-centered kind of, that's who we are, that's our default mode. So sometimes it's good to just ask the Lord. At the beginning of the day, when we come to the Lord, ask Him to help us to be more sensitive to this kind of communication rather than the old stuff that's in a rut.
That's right. And I want to talk to the husbands here now for a minute, because so often the word you used was perfect, ruts, but we get in ruts. Women do too, but guys, you go silent when you get married. I mean, you had a lot to say before you got married, but somehow after marriage, you guys go silent, and your wife wants to hear from you. And just bringing in some communication to her is so important. I remember one day, Tom said to me, honey, you're wonderful. Now that was out of the blue, and it was totally not relevant to anything that was happening in the home. It was just a thought he had that he expressed. So when you have those thoughts, express those thoughts. And I said to him, and this was amazing, I said, I'm going to remind you of that someday, because I'm not always wonderful. We have our own trials and conflicts and, you know, opportunities to grow. And sure enough, my words came back to me, I don't know, weeks later, and we were in one of these tension moments. And I looked at him and I said, honey, I want to remind you how wonderful I am.
Boy, that really threw me off, I have to tell you. It was a good thing, though, and I think it was a God thing, because when she said that, it just stopped me in my tracks, and I said, you are wonderful. And it was a good moment, because I was going down a negative track in my communication and what I was getting ready to express to her. And when she reminded me at that moment, that instant of time, remember, I'm wonderful. And it just totally threw me off. And as I looked at you and as I thought about that, you are wonderful.
It changed the dynamic of our communication in that instance. So that was very intimate communication. So do what you can a little bit daily, and it will grow. It will grow like everything else, and you will find your love growing. And the empty nest won't be feeling so empty. You can fill it up with love.
Amen. And I just want to speak for a moment on the nonverbal, which is more than 80% of our communication. We need to tune in to what are we really doing when we're not saying anything, because we're always communicating. And when we're together in our marriage, we are always communicating something, even when we're silent. So little things that my wife loves it when I come up behind her and I put my arms around her and give her a little gentle kiss on the neck. You like that?
I love it. I mean,
I don't even have to say anything.
No, you don't have to say anything, because you're communicating a message. In that moment of time, he's thinking of me and that he treasures me. And that's really what brings security and love in the relationship. But the second thing we want to talk about in intimacy is the emotional intimacy. This is an area that many of us don't really see the need for in our relationship, but without emotional intimacy, our marriages will start to deteriorate.
That's right. And the scripture reference here, again, it's Song of Solomon, in chapter 4, verse 9, it says, you have captivated my heart, my bride. What language? You have captivated my heart, and one glance of your eyes has captivated me. That's pretty strong language.
It is. So
That's emotional.
It is. It's very verbal, but it's also very emotional.
That's right.
It draws the hearts together. So we need to pay attention to our emotional intimacy. Sometimes we ladies think that guys are the tough ones. They are the ones that can face life and that they don't have emotions. This is not the case. Guys have emotions too, and we need to be sensitive to those emotions.
Yeah.
I remember when we were traveling to a seminar, we were going through a town that my husband lived in when he was 4 years old. And he said to me, "Oh, I remember this town. I was 4 years old." He remembered the name. And as we talked, as we were driving along, I said, "Well, let's go see if we can find the house where you grew up or where you lived at 4, because you only lived there for a couple of years."
That's right. Yeah, so at that time, my dad was managing farms in Michigan where we lived. And so I said, well, we have to go down this road. And so we started down, and it was kind of going down memory lane. And I said, oh, I remember that house, that there was a big old stone house that had been there, and it was there when I was 4 years old. And I remember that. I said, we keep going. And I was looking for the road where our house was on the left, and the road took us to the little school that I went to.
That's right. And as we were making this journey, I recognized his father has passed away, his mother has passed away, his brother is also gone. It's just him left. And these are memories from his childhood that he has no one to share it with. So I encouraged him on this journey. Let's keep going. Let's look for it. I think you can find it. And sure enough, we found it. And then he turned the corner, and down the road, less than a mile, was a schoolhouse. It was still there, and now it's a historic site. Not that he's historic, but it is a historic site because it was built in the 1800s. And he said to me, told me a story when he was in kindergarten there. And I remembered this story. And it was that when he was in kindergarten at the Christmas party, he kissed his first girl. And so he was talking about the desks and all these things. And I said, well, the windows are so high, we can't see in. And I said, let me lift you up so you can look in the window and see if your desk is still there. All of this trying to relive those memories with you.
Yeah, it was actually a beautiful experience. And when I recognized that my wife really wanted to enter into this, it was so meaningful and so deep because, like she said, I have no one that was a part of those memories to share that with. And so, yeah, those windows were really high because the snow got really deep there back, especially when I was that age. So sure enough, my desk was there, okay? That's amazing. Well, then we found out that there was somebody that was taking care of a little museum there.
That's right. And so their phone number was on the museum door next to this old schoolhouse, this historic site. And so I said, honey, we got to call that number. They wouldn't put their phone number on the door if they weren't interested in having people connect with them. So my husband called the number, talked to the man. He said, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I'll let you in that schoolhouse. And so he came down, and I got to go in to the schoolhouse where my husband was a kindergartner.
Yep.
And see his little desk still there, and saw the piano in the corner. And I said to him, okay, you gave away your first kiss before me, so you owe me 2. One because you gave one away, and one because you love me. And so with that, I got 2 kisses, and we went behind the piano, just where he went with his first little girlfriend.
And the curator was, he played along with us, and so he got a picture of us kissing behind the piano. It brought back memories of times that I shouldn't have had at 4 years old. But anyway, there were lots of good memories attached to that whole scene that day.
So take an interest and be emotionally intimate with one another. Don't think that your husband just doesn't have emotions. I mean, if I hadn't have been persistent, he would have just let it go. He wouldn't have seen that, the desire to do
That's
that.
right.
But because I showed interest in who he was and where he grew up and how things was when he was a child, it drew us closer together as well.
It was very meaningful. And I actually got to go back to my home where I was when I was 4 years old, and the home looked almost the same.
Yes.
And the nice thing about it is the people who live there now, it's an Amish family, and they actually invited us to come in. And I said, wow, it hasn't changed. It just brought back so many memories. And I went up the stairs, and I said to my wife, if things haven't changed up here, when I turn left, it's my bedroom right there on the left. And it was still there, just the way not the way I remembered it, but it's the same place, the same size, and it was an amazing experience.
No remodeling over 60 years,
That's
or by
right.
60 years, that's right. So that intimacy, that emotional intimacy is so necessary, and Girls, the more we're emotionally intimate with our husbands, the more emotionally intimate they will be with us.
Yeah, and it's certainly, we often think that women are the emotional ones, but as she's just described, men need to be able to express their emotions, have them drawn out, and then we need to be able to connect with our wife on a very emotional level and understand the needs that she has and be able to communicate about those needs.
That's right. So the third area of intimacy we want to talk about is the physical intimacy. Now, this is probably what you all have been waiting for, because this is where our minds go when we think of intimacy. What are we going to do for our sex tonight? But this is not what we're talking about. We're trying to broaden our understanding of intimacy, that it's much more than just the act of having sex. It is an experience and physical actions of love that we give and do for each other that prepare for the ultimate experience of intimacy.
That's right, because and many of us know this intellectually, but guys, we can go from nothing to everything in a couple of minutes, okay, in terms of how we normally think of physical intimacy. But for our wives, they need an experience that's very different. They need to feel loved. They need to feel secure. They need to feel like we are connected and tuned in. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
That's absolutely right.
And that doesn't just happen by saying, hey, so are we on for tonight? Again, there's that physical side that we often think of.
Yeah.
No, what needs to happen is that we need to be physically involved with them in meaningful ways. One of the things that I do it's just a little thing, but we have a pretty big property out in the country, and it's a ways to our gate.
It is.
And especially on windy or cold days, I will either walk out to the gate or I will ride in the car if you're going to town. Alane's mother lives with us, and then they, occasionally go to town together. I'll open the gate so she doesn't have to get out and get her hair all blown because we have a lot of wind there. Mm-hmm. And that's a little thing, but does that mean something to you?
It means everything to me. I mean, it's not just if the weather's bad. This is 95% of the time. It's rare that you don't come out and do that, open the gate for me. And on my way home from town, I'll call him at a certain point on my journey and tell him where I am, and he'll say, okay, I'll meet you at the gate. And when I get there, the gate is open. He's receiving me back home. That to me is an intimate physical act of love, because he's doing something in a physical way to show that he treasures me. And if we see that every moment we have with one another is to capture those moments and treasure those moments, because we don't know when those moments will end, then we will find that we can grow our love in those intimate ways. Another thing you like to do for me, and this happens very often, when we go to bed at night, he'll say, honey, let me rub your feet for you, because when he gives me this foot rub, that's a great knockout for me. It's a great way to make me relax and get a good night's rest. And that's another token of that physical intimacy that is so meaningful to me in the relationship. So guys, don't think if you spend no time communicating with your wife all day, and you do nothing to connect with her all day, you do nothing to help her all day, and you have no interest in how she's feeling, and you just come home and expect a miracle in the bedroom at night, this isn't going to be a miracle. This is not going to bring the love that you desire. You can have a love reaction and have momentary pleasure, but it's not the love that God desires us to have. Again, we want to refer to the book of Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 2, and it says this, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. So this is another expression of the intimacy in the physical contact or in physical actions that we do to help one another.
Yeah, I mean, we could give you all kinds of examples of this physical side. One of the things that my wife does for me that I really enjoy it, and this is along the food lines, okay? Mm-hmm. Is that physical?
That's very physical.
Especially for guys. So she will fix me a waffle breakfast every Sunday morning when we're home. Now, granted, we're not home a lot. We'd like to be home more often sometimes, but I can always count on it. And what makes it so special is that waffles are my favorite breakfast
That's right,
meal.
they are.
But what also makes it special is that I know that it's not your favorite meal.
That's right.
And yet you do that for love.
That's right.
And I feel loved.
Yes.
That's physical.
Yes, that's absolutely. I mean, there's an old saying, the way to a guy's heart is through his stomach. And so there's some truth to that because,
Absolutely.
if a guy feels like he's getting his favorite foods and he's really enjoying those things that you're ministering in that line, you're also reaching his heart. So I do this, and waffles aren't my favorite food. I mean, I could not even eat a waffle. I usually eat one just to be social, right? But, doing that for him brings me joy. And when I make waffles, I always make enough that we can put some in the freezer. So if we get home on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, he doesn't miss his waffles in the week. He can still have that as well. So I usually try to keep a little bit of backup supply at home.
That's right. So just be creative. And again, if you don't feel like you have creativity happening, then be willing to pray about this. This is how are we growing our love? How are we growing our love in these areas of intimacy that we don't often think of?
Mm-hmm. The more we grow our love in these areas, the more dynamic the actual sexual experience is, the more it's desirable from both husband and wife, and the more fulfilling it is. So this isn't just to get us to this end product,
That's right.
It's to experience the whole journey of that and then have the joy of that, because it brings our hearts closer together. Because you can't always have the physical intimacy the way we know sexuality, but we can always grow our love. And especially as we get older and our kids aren't around. My husband has said to me, we're on our second honeymoon. I mean, this is better than the first time around, and certainly it has been.
Absolutely.
So we want to grow our love through our entire marriage. So just because the kids leave doesn't mean that we have no purpose or no more life and love to give. We can now pour that into more time with each other.
And I just, following what you're saying there, I just have to encourage you that when I was young, when we were in our early marriage, quite honestly, I used to wonder, what do the parents do at this age? I mean, are they still interested in getting together sexually, intimately? I had no idea what it was
You mean
like
you didn't
for them
ask
at
your dad?
16. No, I didn't,
We don't
I'm not
ask
gonna
those kind of
ask those kind of questions. But it's amazing that as our love grows, this is the culmination of what people normally think of. Mm-hmm. And yet they're not doing the things that could really lead to this richest experience. But it's not the experience, it's the culmination of all of this experience together that really is growing our love. And as our love grows, our intimacy has been incredible. It's been, the physical culmination has been incredible because our love is becoming more incredible.
That's right. And so, what I really appreciate about my husband is that he's sensitive to my level of energy. And again, this is where guys and girls are very different. I mean, a guy, like you said, can go from nothing to climax in 2 minutes. And a woman, she's like a slow cooker. It takes her a while to get there most of the time. Not always, but in what I really appreciate, and I think I'm speaking to the husbands here, be sensitive to your wife. And the more that you can, not that she controls your love, your intimate sexual schedule or relationship, but that you're sensitive to her. When she senses your sensitivity, she will also be sensitive to you. There's times I'm very engaged with him, even though that's not where my energy is right at the time, but I can still be very much a part of that and enjoy it just to the same level. And so we have to be sensitive to each other in this sexual intimacy, because it shouldn't be demanded or it shouldn't be controlled, demanded by the guy or controlled by the woman. And it should never be a way that we punish our husbands or get back at him to withhold ourselves, because that's evil. And we need to find other ways we work through our problems other than using that as the ammunition.
That's right, very well said. So now we want to talk about the fourth area, and that is spiritual intimacy. We saved this area for the last because this is the foundation. This is where we really need to focus on making all the other intimacy that we've talked about meaningful, rich, and successful. Mm-hmm.
So if we connect every day together in verbal communication, verbal intimacy, emotional intimacy, and physical intimacy, again, doesn't have to be the sexual act, but physical actions of tenderness and care, we also, and very importantly, like you said, want to connect on a spiritual level, because we can go to the same church, have the same faith, and we can worship together, and we can be totally drifting apart. And neither of us know where the other one is. Sometimes we don't, not even sure where we are in this journey. And so we have found, because of problems in this area, how important it is to connect on a spiritual, intimate level.
Yes. When we moved to Montana, we went through quite an experience, quite a change from our suburban lifestyle. And God used that in incredible ways as a blessing to our family, to our marriage. But we went through some real trials and difficult times in that transition. And one of the things that happened that we became aware of, and we didn't know it was happening in each other, you know, we're living in a little fifth wheel trailer that while we were building our house. And so I would see my wife getting up in the morning, and she was so dutiful to read her Bible, and she was having her prayer time. And I thought, wow, she's really got a good connection with the Lord. That's really great. I'm not sure, you know, how I'm doing. I mean, there's a lot going on, and we're building, and I've been busy, and so I wasn't feeling the energy and the spirit, but I thought you were just having a great experience.
I know, and here's what's really happening. You know, we can go through dry spells in our spiritual connection with God, and oftentimes it's from overwork or being overtired, overstressed, whatever. And sometimes it's just the adversary of our souls trying to beat us down to make us feel like, what's the use anyway?
That's right.
And I was in one of those moments of times, and I could think, I was having thoughts like this. I don't even know, I mean, I'm doing this because I'm supposed to. I'm doing this because this is my habit, but I'm not getting anything from it. I don't know what I'm reading. I don't feel like my prayers are even going outside the roof of the trailer. And I was very, very discouraged, starting even to feel like, here's my husband. I see him up there in the bed area, the fifth wheel, and he's sitting up, and he just seems so meditative, and he's got the word open, and he's growing spiritually, and I am failing as a mom spiritually, I'm failing as a wife spiritually, and my whole life looked very dark. And I started to feel hopeless and discouraged, feeling even to the point that maybe it would be better if somebody else would raise our kids because I'm a mess. And I didn't tell him that initially.
No, and I'm so thankful that when God opened this up, and the Lord did open it up, and I'm thankful we were willing to talk about it, but when we opened this up together, you were vulnerable first with me, and she just opened her heart, and she shared the darkness, the discouragement that you were having. And then I just opened up and I said, you know, I'm going to be honest with you, I've been struggling with this too. But the fact that we could open that up and share that was a level of spiritual intimacy that we needed.
That's right. And as I shared that with him, I mean, this is being extremely vulnerable because obviously I don't want to disappoint him, and I'm really bearing myself and being very honest with him that, you know, you can kind of cover in the day-to-day. But when I shared that with him, he did not feel upset, or he did not feel like, what's my problem, or give me a sermon or anything like that. He was very understanding and compassionate. So when your spouse comes to you with weaknesses and failures, have an understanding heart. We talked about that earlier in the communication intimacy. And when you did that for me, it let me share everything that I was going through. And you shared very vulnerably with me. And then we realized, okay, we're both floundering here. What are we going to do to readjust course? Because both of us don't feel like we have a connection with God, that we are experiencing the love of Christ in our hearts and in our home and even in our marriage. So that started us on a new path of spiritual intimacy.
That's right. And so from that time forward and to this day, and as we share now, we've been married nearly 40 years, 39 years. And the Lord is just making marriage better and better as we're willing to grow our love.
That's right.
But from that time on, we dedicated a portion of our time in the morning, seeking first the kingdom of God with each other.
That's right.
And we've never let go of that. And that has been such a tremendous blessing to our marriage and to our love and to our spirituality. I determined at that time with God that I never want to lose track of my wife's spiritual condition ever again. And so as a result of that, we love to walk and talk together. It's one of our favorite things to do. And so as a result of that, I will periodically ask her 3 questions. The first question is, how am I doing? I remember the very first time that God prompted me to ask that question, I was a little apprehensive about what that answer might be.
That's right, because sometimes our words, ladies, aren't seasoned with grace.
So, but anyway, as over the years, I've continued to ask these 3 questions. How am I doing, knowing that I will get an honest answer from my wife? She will not beat me up, but she will tell me the truth, areas I can improve in, or how I'm doing.
So how am I doing meeting your needs? Is there other things I can do that would be hitting the mark closer? That's that first question. How am I doing? Because early in our marriage, he wasn't doing very well, and I wasn't doing very well, and I wasn't very happy, and he wasn't very happy, and we blamed each other for our misery. And so when he asked me that question, he asked it because he really wants to hear what I think and what I perceive, and then he will adjust course if there needs to be an adjustment.
And then the second question that I ask, and that is, so how are we doing? How are we doing as a couple? How are we doing together? And I know that then she's going to be honest with me from her perspective. I'll tell her what my perspective is. And then I always end with the last question. And some of these questions can take us for, in our long walk, we can really talk about them. I will ask her this last question, and how are you doing spiritually? How is it really going in your connection with Christ?
And that has been so meaningful because even if I'm having a struggle, I can be honest and open with him. He's not going to condemn me. He's going to hear my heart, and he's going to be there to help me. And it needs to work both ways. How is he doing spiritually? We put judgments on each other. We see things a certain way, and I've had wives tell me, well, I can't trust my husband because he never picks up the Bible. That's a wrong thinking. Mm-hmm. God can work in the husband's mind without the Bible. Obviously, if he's reading the Bible, that's going to make things a lot easier. But it doesn't mean that he's disqualified from making good choices and being a good leader in the home. So it's so important that we connect spiritually. Mm-hmm. And this time together daily, if it's 15 minutes to an hour, it's reading together the same thing and talking about it and processing it and then applying it to our lives. Is this something we should be doing as a couple? Is this something we should be doing as a family? And then with that, look at ways that we can grow our love through our spiritual connection with Christ, which is the source of all true love. It's from Christ.
That's right. Philippians, the 2nd chapter and the 2nd verse says, complete my joy, being in the same mind, having the same love, and being in one accord, in one mind. What a statement about growing our love.
Yeah, because we have that unity which comes from Christ. So we just want to encourage you that there's action steps that you can take to grow your love. And I want to say, even if you're not an empty nester, start early. The earlier you start in your relationship,
that's right,
the better it's going to be. And the more you can experience of a growing, never-ending love, the way God intended it to be. So maximize those times. And if you do find yourself struggling, and you're kind of two people sitting in your own corners, your kids are gone, and you're watching the news, guys, and she's doing something else, shut those things off and be intentional about taking a few minutes to connect and readjusting your course as a couple and talk about what can we do to grow our love in our marriage. Don't let the empty nest bring division between us, but rather the empty nest gives us an opportunity to experience more love, that we have just the time for each other without other people interrupting.
Absolutely. So the first action step is learn how to communicate intimately. And don't be afraid of this process. Don't be afraid to admit that your communication might be broken. Don't be afraid to admit that you need some help, because the worst thing we can do is just do the blame game and, I'm right and no, I'm not going to change. This is a time, especially as my wife's saying, it doesn't have to be after it's better before your children leave, not only that they see this example of you learning how to communicate, but when they do leave, that you are having meaningful, deep communication.
Yeah. And so start wherever you are. And if only one person starts, spicing up your communication, using those endearing terms, looking for ways to present something instead of a negative way, but in a positive way, and see the difference that that can make. By one person making that step forward, it can have an influence, and pretty soon it's a reciprocal communication. And then it's fun to see how broad and deep that love and
That's right.
communication can grow.
Number 2, develop this emotional intimacy with intentional choices. Develop this, build this kind of communication. That means that for us guys, sometimes we're not real good at maybe knowing how to ask the right questions. If you don't know, just be blunt and ask your wife, how am I doing with meeting your emotional needs? That's pretty basic, but if our pride doesn't get in the way, if we aren't too heady and high-minded, as the Bible says, we can go to her and she'll tell us, and be easy on us if we're just starting.
That's right. And recognize, ladies, that our husbands do have emotions more than just anger and irritation. They have tender emotions too. You've experienced them, or you would never be in a relationship with him. Somewhere along the line in your relationship, he expressed those tender emotions. So let's see what we can do to rebirth those emotions, shall I say, in our husbands. Take that interest where they are. Yeah, they do have to face a lot of tough things in life. So let's not make it tough on them at home. And then let's express our emotions. You know, my husband knows when I'm very happy, and that's most of the time, but he also knows when I'm sad or I'm having a rough day. And that's good, because those emotions that we can express, and I know they'll be accepted and received, helps to grow that emotional intimacy and that caring.
And number 3, deepen the physical intimacy. That means all these other things that often lead to the most beautiful part, or the icing on the cake, but build those intimacies in the day that have to do with kind gestures, with being able to do something to help the other person. I'm thinking of you. I'm doing this for our love.
And just being together. I mean, sometimes I'll go out and he's doing a project outside, and I'll just go out and say, can I do this with you? I just really want to have this time with you. And so I'll shovel rock with him or whatever he's doing. And that action of just saying that I'm enjoying the time to be with him and participating with him in this project, that's a form of physical intimacy. Right. And it's a connection early in the day, so that the end of the day can be the great experience that we desire it to be.
Amen. And number 4 is building that spiritual intimacy, that deep connection that we can each have with God first, and then with each other. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're not having that kind of connection with God, that can change today. God is reaching out to each one of us, and he wants that connection with us. He misses us when we don't come to him and have that time. And then we can transfer that spiritual experience into a connection here that grows our love.
So practice these steps. Be intentional. Make the decision that you can simply every day just do one of each of these points. Just do one sparkle word. Just do one physical action of intimacy. Putting one little thing in every day will make a difference, a huge difference in how your day rolls out. And by the end of the week, it'll be a different experience than it was at the beginning of the week.
And you will be growing your love. It won't be stagnating. It won't be dying. It will be growing in the grace of Christ.